This page was created to teach Black history. Unfortunately, the American educational system was designed to exclude our real historical account, so we are here to dismantle it. It's time to enlighten those of us who have been kept in the dark. I am a Black man who didn't know enough about my own history, so I began to dig deeper and do my own research. Black history is American history, so I want people of all races and cultures to join together to learn our history as one. Here, I will share all of my findings. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to Teaching Black History. The story of Robert Sengstacke Abbott. Robert was born on November 24th, 1868 in St. Simons, Georgia, to parents who had been enslaved before the American War. The Sea Islands were a place of the Gullah people, an African-descended ethnic group who continued stronger aspects of African cultures than among African Americans in other areas of the South. His father, Thomas Abbott, died when Robert was a baby. His widowed mother, Flora Abbott, met and married John Sengstacke, an American mixed-race man of unusual background who had recently come to the U.S. from Germany. His parents were Tama, a freed slave woman of African descent, and her husband Herman Sengstacke, a German sea captain who had a regular route from Hamburg to Savannah. In the Georgia port city in 1847, Herman saw a slave sale. He was so distressed, he bought the freedom of Tama, a young woman from West Africa. They married in Charleston, South Carolina, before returning to Georgia, where their interracial marriage was prohibited. Their mixed-race son John was born the next year, and a daughter in 1848. Tama died soon after their daughter was born, and Herman took the children back to Germany to be raised by family. John met the young Black widow Flora, who had a young son, Robert. He cared for Robert as if he were his own. Together, the couple had several children. Their family crossed rigid racial boundaries. Robert was given the middle name Sengstacke to mark his belonging in the family. John Sengstacke had become a Congregationalist missionary as an adult. He wrote, "There is but one church, and all who are born to God are members of it. God made a church, man made denominations. God gave us a holy Bible, disputing men made different kinds of disciples." Sengstacke became a teacher, determined to improve the education of Black children. He also became a publisher, founding the Woodville Times, based in what was then a town named Woodville. It was later changed by the city of Savannah, Georgia. Given the industrialization underway in the country from 1892 to 1896, Abbott studied the printing trade at Hampton University, an historical Black college in Virginia. At Hampton, he sang with the Hampton Choir and Quartet, which toured nationally. He earned a law degree from Kent College of Law, Chicago in 1898. Abbott tried to set up a law practice working for a few years in Gary, Indiana, and Topeka, Kansas. He returned home to Georgia for a period, then went back to Chicago. After settling in Chicago in 1905, Abbott founded the Chicago Defender newspaper with an initial investment of 25 cents. He started printing in a room at his boarding house. His landlady encouraged him, and he later bought her an 8-room house. He wanted to push for job opportunities and social justice and was eager to persuade blacks to leave the segregated Jim Crow South for Chicago. A key part of his distribution network was made up of African American railroad porters who were highly respected among blacks. And by 1925, they had organized a union as the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. They often sold or distributed the paper on trains, credited with contributing to the great migration of rural Southern blacks to Chicago. The Defender became the most widely circulated black newspaper in the country. It was known as America's black newspaper. Its success resulted in Abbott becoming one of the first self-made millionaires of African American descent. His business expanded as African Americans moved to the cities and became an urbanized northern population. Most were from rural areas of the South. From 1890 to 1908, all the southern states had passed constitutions of laws that raised barriers to voter registration and effectively disenfranchised most blacks and many poor whites. They were utterly closed out of the political systems. Schools and other public facilities reserved for blacks were typically underfunded and ill-maintained. Legislatures imposed Jim Crow conditions, producing facilities for blacks that were separate but never equal, such as railroad cars providing separate but equal, the northern and midwestern industrial centers where blacks could vote and send children to school, were recruiting workers based on expansion of manufacturing and infrastructure to supply the U.S.'s expanding population. The Defender told stories of early migrants to the North, giving hope to the disenfranchised and oppressed people in the South of other ways to live. Abbott, through his writings in the Chicago Defender, expressed those stories and encouraged people to leave the South for the North. He even set a date of May 15, 1917, for what he called the Great Northern Drive to occur. In his weekly, he showed pictures of Chicago and had numerous classifieds for housing. In addition, Abbott wrote about how awful a place the South was to live in comparison to the idealistic North. Abbott's words described the North as a place of prosperity and justice. This persuasive writing thereby made this journal probably the greatest stimulus that migration had. Abbott was a fighter, a defender of rights. He listed 9 goals as the Defender's Bible. 1. American race prejudice must be destroyed. 2. Opening up all trade unions to blacks as well as whites. 3. Representation in the president's cabinet. 4. Hiring black engineers, firemen, and conductors on all American railroads and to all jobs in government. 5. Gaining representation in all departments of the police forces over the entire United States. 6. Government schools giving preference to American citizens before foreigners. 7. Hiring black motormen and conductors on surface, elevated, and motor bus lines throughout America. 8. Federal legislation to abolish lynchings. And 9. Full enfranchisement of all American citizens. The Chicago Defender not only encouraged people to migrate north for a better life, but to fight for their rights once they got there. The slogan of the paper in the first goal was, "American race prejudice must be destroyed. Robert openly discussed African American history in his articles, including its difficult issues. He believed that laws restricting personal choice in a mate-violated constitution, and that the decision of two intelligent people to mutually love and self-sacrifice should not be a matter of public concern. The defender actively promoted the northward migration of black Southerners, particularly to Chicago. Its columns not only reported on, but encouraged the Great Migration. Abbott officially joined the Baha'i faith in 1934. He had found that its convention to elect its National Spiritual Assembly seemed free of prejudice. Abbott was seeking an atmosphere free of race prejudice. Even in religious communities, he sometimes found that mixed-race African Americans who were light-skinned sometimes also demonstrated prejudice against those who were darker. In 1919, Illinois Governor Frank Lowden appointed Abbott to the Chicago Commission on Race Relations. The commission conducted studies about the changes resulting from the Great Migration. In one period, 5,000 African Americans were arriving in the city every week. He also assisted descendants of Captain Charles Stevens, the former owner of his enslaved birth father before emancipation. With his wealth, Abbott aided the Stevens descendants in Georgia during the Depression and paid for the education of their children. Abbott died of Bright's disease in 1940 in Chicago. He was buried in Lincoln Cemetery in Blue Island, Illinois.